Hello, I'm ReVerse Butcher, and I'm the artist and poet responsible for creating Kaleidoscopic Erasures. It's a brand new book of VISPO, which stands for Visual Poetry, and it's being published by Incisors in February 2022. Kaleidoscopic Erasures intentionally straddles a divide between visual art and text-based poetry. For the last 20-odd years, I've written, published, and performed poetry on stage. I'm also known for my unique, difficult-to-reproduce artists' books, in the style of modern-day illuminated manuscripts. Those have included cut-up, blackout, or erasure poetry, as well as collage, traditional painting, or illustration. My work has always been experimental, and I've never been able to limit myself to one genre or art form at a time. But it wasn't until I started making virtual reality art in late 2018 that I really started to ruminate on the relationship between 3D space, text, and power. I started experimenting with what I called spatial poems, which were poems you could walk through in VR or otherwise use to create a sense of spatial immersion using projections during live performances. Meanwhile, I was also making 2D VISPO works that forced the reader to engage with nonlinear reading, where meaning could not be forced into reading left to right or top to bottom. I firmly believe that meaning is multiple, and that VISPO reflects that far more honestly than using traditional text that defines objects, narratives, characters as only one thing, and not a possible multitude of things. Kaleidoscopic Erasures is what happened when I mixed a traditional collage, cut-up, and erasure practice with a lot of time making VR art. They both influenced each other. I was suddenly able to write poems that one could walk through. Poems that were 5 stories tall and yet existed in a 3 by 3 meter physical space. So while Kaleidoscopic Erasures is available now as a book, I encourage you to think about space, movement, shape, and power when you, the reader, are looking at these works on the page. Why does text mean what it means? What is the function of text? How many ways can something be read? Where does it sit on the page? What is it shaped like? Does it suggest movement? How does that affect the meaning? If you read something first, does that make it more important than other things you may read after? Where do you start reading, and where do you finish? Is being sensible or legible necessary for a poem to move you emotionally? How does time or timing affect a poem? And how might that be represented in a visual format? And if you and another reader see something different in the same poem, which one of you is right? Can anyone ever be right? Does it matter? Kaleidoscopic Erasures is part of a tradition of artworks that refuse easy definition, much like me, or you, or any kind of human consciousness. If language also creates our understanding of reality, then might breaking text also break reality? What might we build from its bones? VISPO as a genre collects all sorts of writers and artists. Some want a work to make sense. Some gamify words. Some use code. Some artists ask you to read a work where the letters don't sit still. Some writers will fold words over like dough and see what rises. Some works are asemic and are intentionally illegible. They ask, is meaning even important to being moved by a work of art? Some artists will intentionally limit their tools to crayons and stickers, or paint and ink, or just whiteout. Some artists will eschew technology and go full poetry brute. Some will embrace technology and make video poems or crypto poetry or mash all the medias together just to see what happens. When making a more traditional cut-up or erasure poem, I've always known that the random juxtapositions are never fully random, because any meaning created is all filtered through my own subconscious. The words that hook themselves into importance or dominance only do so because my unconscious mind is affected somehow by those particular words, images, or odd juxtapositions. They still operate in lines, or as a sort of grid, even if one is being encouraged to read or write them non-linearly. By putting the base or found text through a kaleidoscopic process first, it creates a hypertextual mandala as a starting point, where the text cannot be read in any sort of straight line. Words are mirrored, cut short, repeated, fractured, jammed into and around each other. Other incidental page markings often become floral, decorative, or glitchy interruptions. These poems made me feel the same way as when one repeats a word, any word, over and over again. It starts to lose meaning in your mind and reality bends and you trip up over the familiar because the tongue in one's mouth and the word in one's mind have both forgotten each other in the monotonous task. It's those errors, cracks, and glitches that I find most interesting. What slips through? I wanted these VISPO works to be a riot against sentence structure. They were simple and fun to make. Many of them include visual puns, and I was surprised at how many of them made me laugh, even if wryly. When moving between projects or media, say traditional illustration and VR, I found it helpful to make 1 or 2 kaleidoscopic erasure poems in between sessions. It wasn't until I'd assembled the whole collection that the works made sense as a bit of a bridge between traditional cut and paste, scissors and glue collage, and making spatial poems or sculptures in VR. Unfortunately, because of COVID, it's been impossible to plan live in-person launch events to celebrate the release of Kaleidoscopic Erasures. And because these works are not designed to be read aloud, it presented us with a unique challenge on how to properly launch the book. Zoom readings with fabulous special guests interpreting the poems were out. But never fear, VR came to the rescue. I built the Kaleidoscopic Erasures VR art gallery in VRChat as a meeting place where people could come and experience these VISPO works living large in all their psychedelic color. And on the 19th of February 2022, we held a book launch and a gallery launch in VR. I was thrilled and surprised by many of the questions and interpretations from people who are mainly concerned with 3D art and who have had, up until then, very little exposure to experimental poetry. Here's what happened next.
That's the everybody, hold on, everybody's here.
Everyone's here. Hey, thanks for coming.
This is great. The gang's all here. Cool. This is great. And get up here.
Yes, I built these little shelves so people can get up close and personal with the works.
Fantastic. It's just so textural. It's great.
Well, that one there, I actually used real gold leaf. Yeah, so they're like on the base text, you can see on the edges of the circle, there's that gold leaf stuff. That's proper gold leaf. So I often use like acrylic ink. You know, hopefully I'm going to leave this gallery up as a persistent experience so people can have a go at wandering through in their own time and hopefully stumble across it as one does in VRChat. Yeah, I was really exploring the ideas of like voids and space on a page compared with like space and 3D space with sculpture in VR. These works were really heavily influenced by the fact that I had spent so much time making VR art. There was just no way for me to look at drawing in a straight, flat way anymore. Just so it broke my brain, and this is what happened.
This looks so great.
This one here was called Triumph Over Reason and Ideas. And yeah, you can sort of see that circular triumph. You can look at it from any direction, and whatever direction, whatever way it's facing, reason and ideas will always be triumphed over. So I don't know whether that means science or logic is better. I don't think it is, but It was just the mood I was in that day, I guess.
I see what you mean. That it has almost a 3D sort of quality to it, even though it is 2D.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
See that it's definitely influenced by your 3D experiences.
for sure.
Totally. And
Yeah.
you do the thing with the video where you'll have like mirror images intersecting and crossing with each other.
Yes.
This is a still shot.
100%. That's definitely right in there. Yeah.
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 Kaleidoscopic. That's true. Yeah.
Say right now that the phrase I'm going to force my thoughts into behaving is I'm going to have to sit with that for a little bit. Right? And I would like to employ it. I usually try to use my thoughts to make me behave.
Yeah?
Doing it the other way around. It's very intriguing to me.
Wow. Well, yeah, I think definitely as an artist, there is so much paperwork we have to do that is not anything to do with actually making art, which is tragic, sad, and unwarranted. However, it is life. And when
That is right.
yeah, it's just rude, Walt. It's just rude. Expecting us to selection criteria. What the hell is that? No.
Are the paint strokes on these, are those physical paint or is it digital paint?
No, that's physical paint on those ones, Willow. Yeah, so I have this beautiful set of acrylic inks that I just adore for painting with anything like this.
Like darker around the edges and looks like it sort of blends in. Blends.
This is acrylic?
Acrylic ink. Acrylic ink is the best. Oh my god, because you can mix it with other acrylics and you can mix it with other things, but it's like an ink. It is really purely bright pigment and it's so much fun. Yeah, you can make it look like watercolor if you add water, and if you add it to like a white acrylic or a super base of some case, like a base paint of some sort, it's really versatile.
I love how much it
I've never even
retains
heard
the
of that.
vibrancy of the color. It really is very, goes from being very light to very saturated, and it's very vibrant.
I had these old encyclopedias and a couple of sort of like old base texts that I went looking for, and I just made hundreds and hundreds of pages of sort of like stock paper from this vintage lot of stuff that I collected. But yeah, this one here is called Poet's Bookcase, and this one here like was mostly a digital work. So like quite often the erasure sections, which are the words that are circled, I do in Procreate on iPad because it's very easy to sort of pull all that around, and there's great brushes that make it look really organic. So half the time you can't tell the difference between whether it's actually a paint or not. So they really are true, digital traditional hybrids.
That's really cool. Yeah, I've heard Procreate's great, but I never played with it.
Oh, I reckon you'd love it.
Procreate, it'll be your best friend. Seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
The lines.
The lines are great fun in Procreate. Yeah. In Procreate, you can it's quick. What is it called? Quick shape. So you get these really sort of beautiful straight lines, and it does it automatically. But you still have to obviously draw the lines, so it is time consuming. But you do have like an inbuilt ruler, which allows you to have both those really sort of like the contrast between the sharp, intricate lines and then the curvy ones around the text.
Yeah.
Somebody was mentioning how there's so many circles in this, and I've been working on a circle series for like 2 years, and I hadn't put the two together.
Yeah.
But the works so speak to each other. They're not the same, but they are almost like, siblings.
Part of the same family.
In fact,
Yeah.
the lines on the hands, well, it does remind me of the Circle series.
Well, very, like, before I started doing the 3D sculptures of the Circle series, I did a whole bunch of these illustrations that were all continuous line drawings. So that's where you get this influence of that. And I'm a huge fan of that really fine line work, and the continuous line drawings rock my world. I absolutely adore them.
I think I've said before, but your line work is just excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Drawing tiny lines has saved my sanity 100 times over. If we want to go over here, this one here is called The Vacant Grasp, and I made this one thinking about the idea of Ouija boards, actually, believe it or not. the idea of the planchette in the center and the void, and this idea that you're grasping at nothing, and all of that. This one here, I sort of, it's fun because you've got that 3D effect with the lines, and I was really experimenting with how to give the idea of sort of like movement and shape and space in that one.
Top Gunsy's head.
Yeah.
What is
Look at Top Gunsy's head because he's like this, going like this.
Perfect.
Fabulous. That is exactly the response I want from my poetry, which is like, what? Like, what the f*** is this? If I have got that response out of at least one person whenever I display or read something, I consider it a success. So
That's amazing. You've got your title for your next book then. You can call it Head Tilt.
yeah. Well, I might have to. Head tilt. They can all be images of heads tilting, and VISPO works. Things that confuse me. Just a list. Yeah, that would be fun. Oh my God, Sandy, we should collaborate. We should collaborate this and make this happen. We should collaborate. Yeah, absolutely. Hell yeah. I'm down for that.
This is the 60-degree section.
Yeah, the 60 degrees.
5-degree section.
So this one here is another handy. This one is another handy one. All the hands. It's called Natural Realism, and I think I was feeling a bit depressed when I made this one, despite the fact it's very jubilant. I think that's generally my depressed phase. I'm both jubilant and sad at the same time. But this one here, you can see in the center, it says a depression. So natural realism, a state of natural realism is depression. I think that this is probably, don't take it to a psychologist because they will put me somewhere. So.
Oh no.
No.
Absolutely take this to a psychologist.
Oh, really? You reckon?
Where have you been all my life? I want to talk about this for hours.
Yeah, one's called Science. To me, it makes me think of sound and like sound. You know that sound when you get like sound waves or sound distorting because it's so loud? It gives me that kind of feeling, but only with text.
I was thinking it looks like an album cover. It reminds me of like some old calligraphy style.
This one here is a bit of a comment on the idea of expressive writing. Like one of the base texts I used was a old out of copyright work called Louis, A View of Him, which was by Louise Collet, who is this amazing feminist writer who's been totally overlooked. And she was one of the inspirations for Madame Bovary. Yeah, she's had this really interesting life. The only French female poet to have won the A prize twice, yeah, completely underrepresented. Anyway, she was one of the vintage paper stocks that I found to use for these kinds of things. Mm-hmm.
It's like a cross between a mandala. It's like a cross between a mandala and a circuit board, kind of.
That's an interesting interpretation. You're totally right.
It does.
It looks like it does look like a computer chip.
It's a really
That's what I like
interesting.
all this. There's so much. Yeah, there's a lot of scope for interpretation with all this.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it kind of it also looks a bit like a page from an old grimoire or something, like a really old textbook.
Yeah.
Got that kind of magic look to it. Great.
I read this fabulous book one time at the State Library of Victoria that was all about holes. It was called Holes, and it was all about this idea of the void never really being fully empty. And when I was making this work, I was definitely thinking about that. Because you've got this chaos, you've got this circle, and I mean, I kind of think that the void, like when they say there's nothing in the void, that actually the void is just so overwhelming we've blocked it all out. There's everything in the void, not nothing in the void. That's how it feels like to me, anyway.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like that. Yeah. So is that full or empty? I don't know.
it.
Literally looking at it, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I love it.
Excellent. Oh, that's thought-provoking. That's fantastic.
I'd love to show you this other one that has a very sort of 3D effect, considering we're all 3D people here. This one over here, This one's called The Earth Vertical, and no, I'm not a flat earther. I fully believe the Earth is, round and all those things. But
It must be the colours.
it's the colors that give that sort of real sense of...
Very, yeah. Wow. It's like looking at one of those.
God, they really zing, don't they? That's
Yeah.
the closer you get, the more 3D it is, actually.
I know.
It's look like they're on
Fabulous.
different layers, but yeah, it's just flat.
Bonkers.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did use layers to make the artwork in terms of making sure that you saw different things, but I also applied a couple of different... Yeah. But when you're designing it. There is like a chromatica aberration effect on it as well, so you get this sense of...
I was gonna say, like separating RGB or something.
This
That is
section
just,
I
it's just a
look
great
around.
use of colour. I love stuff like that.
Oh, thank you. I thought as the VR 3D people you are. Yeah. Yeah.
We'd appreciate it, yeah.
Yeah.
Make it pop, huh?
I was just trying to
Yeah,
imagine what it would
so
look like if you had like one of those old pair of 3D glasses with the.
Oh yeah.
And if you
Yo!
imagine if you had a
yeah.
filter
Yes,
that
I
you
was
could
just
add
thinking
to
that.
your headset, so you could change your eye colour. Because I reckon it would change the whole look of it.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, it would do, actually, yeah. That'd be
Yeah.
interesting.
With acrylic ink on there as well as some Procreate stuff.
Little stars. That's neat.
Thank you.
Yeah. You see that?
It.
This one definitely has a bit of a witchy feel to it. Got these sort of like tarantula hands with the universe in their nails and
And they do look like spiders. It's kind of
Yeah,
yeah.
they could f you up. So
yeah. They're coming for you. Yeah. For sure. Correct.
object experiment,
Yeah.
and I love it. I love it.
Yeah. I want to break language.
In
The whole point.
In virtual reality.
I know, right? It's very meta. But don't tell, because we didn't say. Break reality in virtual reality. It's too much. It's too much, everybody.
Obsessed with the idea of trying to like make letters that were actually like not actual letters, but like glyphs that were 3D. I was just like, change language if you can look at a letter from all angles, and it
Yes.
changes. The letter itself changes, or whatever the form or glyph it is changes. So I've been thinking about that too. I never came to any conclusion, but it was just an idea, and it
Whoa.
kind of speaks to what you're talking about. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Very
you literally break the form by just moving your position or its position, and then it actually gets deeper.
Well, I'd be super keen to see if you came up with anything around that idea. I reckon it'd be really powerful. It's definitely an interesting line of inquiry.
Yeah. That's still where I am.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yes, for sure.
This one? Okay. Oh yes, God or Motherhood. This is a fun one.
Yes.
Because, they're kind of linked.
I mean, I was gonna say, I think I do. I want to hear more. Me is instantly drawn to it.
Yeah, well, I guess this one here is not really so circular. It's definitely very triangular. And funnily enough, the other one that's really about sort of like the idea of parentage or feminism, wife, mother, mistress, child, god, all that stuff is another triangle. And I wonder if in my own brain there's a hierarchy chart going on. I don't know. It's possible.
I think that is very interesting.
I kind of like this one too because it looks like it's going off like a rocket, and I guess maybe God is in the sky, maybe God is all around us. Who knows? Is God anywhere? I don't know.
See,
I
this
mean,
is so funny because I actually saw like a weaving loom in it myself.
Ah,
That was just
Mm.
my first impression.
that's a really interesting interpretation. I like it. So this one's called Wife, Mistress, Woman, Child, and again, it's got that triangular look to it. And you've got those motion movements. The child section is moving away from the mother. Woman, mistress, wife. You've got that power, thing, which is very, cishet patriarchal.
How long did it take you to do all of these? There was so much work here.
Oh, about 2 years. Yeah, 2 years. It was a project I've been working on for about 2 years. Yeah, I started. I think. Oh, thanks. I think the first lot of them were published.
What are your favorites?
My favorites. It's like asking if you have a favorite child. You're not supposed to have a favorite child, but you do. So but you do. Yeah, there's a couple that are close to my heart.
I taste flavor in my ears.
Yeah, I tasted flavor in my ears. This one's fun.
What is it?
It's called I Tasted Flavor in My Ears. I tasted flavor in my ears.
Oh, I need to know what that
Yummy.
What does that? I don't know what that means. Have I mistakenly done something super sus and I didn't know? It's possible.
I don't know.
You can always try.
Yeah, it's the dream, living the dream. It's just an absurdist. It's a bit of absurdist humor, I think, in this one here. You know, quite often when you're working with, huge reams and reams and reams of randomized text, you get these sort of silly, almost meaningless things, but it wasn't anything sort of super deep, this one, but I do like the color scheme, and it was fun to think about
I do too.
motion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was drawn right away to
Those
those.
colors. Those are colors I favor.
Glad you chose that title too, because
It's a lot better than Wet Willy.
Very true. It is a lot better than Wet Willy. But maybe I should change the title just so that people have a giggle. Would be a good one.
Wet Willy in my heart.
Wet Willy in my heart forever.
From now on, yeah.
And this is why I need to publish my poetry, because otherwise I would never have the joy of Wet Willy. I would never have the joy of this. I need to let my work free into the world so everybody can interpret it the way they like and bring new richness to my deeply philosophical work.
Interpretation.
It's all about interpretation. Absolutely. Without, it's once you've created a work and let it into the world, it's no longer yours. It belongs to everybody else, and they can Wet Willy it, and they will. They 100% will, especially if you put it on the internet. It becomes Wet Willy forever.
Wow.
That sounds great.
It's really simple. It's called Close This Novel.
Okay.
And yeah. It's the last one in the book, so it's instructional. So that is how we launched a book in VR. We laughed. No one cried. No one got too drunk. Nobody needed to call security. All in all, I feel it was a success. VR enthusiasts, this poetry is for you. If you've not connected with experimental poetry before but might be VISPO curious, drop in sometime and ask as many questions as you like. These works are really accessible. You VR beings already know what it is like to be sucked into a portal and chucked out somewhere else, out of this world, with some strange code under your tongue. This psychedelic poetry is same, but different. VISPO, poetry, and digital art enthusiasts, this poetry is for you. Books have always been the first virtual realities, with our own imaginations building the first incredible immersive worlds. And if you liked that, it will blow your ever-loving mind when you start to think about all the new media art possibilities for literature and VR. But, most importantly, get yourself a book! And let's celebrate that weirdo poetry has prevailed in very challenging times.